Welcome to Automotive Innovators Unplugged, spotlighting the innovators, disruptors, and forward thinkers shaping the future of automotive retail.
Each week, we'll dive into the tools, tech, and strategies that help dealers win in today's market and get a little personal with our guests.
Introducing our host, Sean Kelley, #1 Amazon bestselling author, Special Operations Combat Veteran, and CEO of Car Motivators, known in automotive as the CarViz Coach.
And JP Burkemper, automotive AI expert and co-founder of VinSight, helping dealerships retain customers with state-of-the-art artificial intelligence.
Now it's time for the show.
All right, appreciate everyone taking the time to join today. We're going to keep this tight and practical because this is a topic that doesn't get talked about enough in this industry. Most dealerships think they have a sales problem or even a marketing problem, but the reality is the biggest opportunity is what happens after the sale. So just to level it with a few numbers here, only about 1 in 4 customers actually schedule their first service appointment at the time of delivery. The dealer's share of service visits is declining, and each lost customer is worth roughly $12,000 in lifetime value. So when you look at it this way, the problem becomes pretty clear. We're not losing customers at the sale. We're losing them after. Today, we're going to break this into 3 parts. First, what actually happens after the customer leaves? Second, why this problem continues? And third, what actually works inside real dealerships. I've got a great group here with different perspectives. We got operations, BDC, leadership, vehicle ownership experiences. So you're going to want to hear this and how it actually plays out across different stores. Matt Raymond, the COO of Bowtie Auto Solutions, works directly with dealerships on service BDC operations, handling inbound overflow, missed calls, and building outbound campaigns that drive traffic back into the store. What makes Matt's perspective valuable is he sees the operational reality most dealers don't. Call volume, missed opportunities, and what actually happens when the phone stops ringing. We have Anthony Alagona, the founder and CEO of Appointments That Show. He helps dealerships improve communication and increase appointment show rates and implement systems that consistently drive measurable growth through both off-site BDC support and on-site training. What makes Anthony's perspective valuable is he bridges strategy and execution, not just building processes, but making sure they actually happen inside the store. And his core belief is simple: business development isn't a department, it's a mindset. We have Sean Kelley, the founder and CEO of Car Motivators, the #1 coaching practice in the automotive industry, where he helps dealerships build leadership systems and cultures that drive long-term customer and employee retention. He's also a special operations combat veteran, a #1 Amazon best-selling author, and serves as the leadership development trainer for Infinity USA. What makes Sean's perspective valuable? He's focused on what most dealers overlook. Retention doesn't break at the sale. It breaks after, when leadership, accountability, and culture aren't built to sustain the relationship. Lastly, we have Vic Turselli. Vic has been in the automotive industry his entire life, from technician to sales to the vendor side for over 2 decades. He's seen how dealerships have evolved, especially around communication and follow-up. And what makes Vic's perspective valuable is he looks at the ownership experience across the full life cycle and where most dealerships fall short in that. They rely on reminders, but miss real engagement with the customer after the sale. So let's get into it. All right, we're going to start with reality. Customer buys a car, drives off the lot. What actually happens next inside most dealerships? Matt, from an operational standpoint, what are you seeing day to day?
Yeah, so on our end, typically customer drives off the lot is, did we schedule that first service appointment? I know it's talked about a lot at dealerships, but is it happening? And then from there, do they know where to go, when to come back for service? I think I shared with you guys the last time we were on a call, I went into a dealership when I bought a car way back in the day, but I went back in to service it, and the advisor turned around. He's like, "What are you doing in here? This isn't where you come." I just got my car and left, never came back, right? Because he never told me where to go, what to do. And so for us on our end, we want to make sure the guest experience from the sales to the service handoff is letting the customer know next steps, what to do, what's covered, right? Like, for example, Toyota stores, Toyota Care, if the dealership offers, the first 2 oil changes complimentary, whatever it might be, right? It's keeping them informed, keeping them educated on everything they get, giving the Y service with us benefits.
So you gave us a good little story there. I guess I'll get a little deeper here. If I walked into a store, what would I actually see versus what leadership probably thinks is happening?
Yeah, so one of the things we do is when we go out to visit our dealer partners throughout the country, we walk into other stores that are not our current partners, just to see what we can get for business, as well as kind of see the operations going on. Most of the time, the only people that will talk to us are the service advisors, and we kind of have to stand there awkwardly for a few minutes, make eye contact, look at them. We don't bring flyers in, we don't carry backpacks in, right? We just want to look like we're a customer so that we get the hello. And it takes a little bit to get a hello. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of dealerships that do some really great work. We were recently in the Midwest and walked into a store, and one of the guys said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. We had reached out. We're an outsourced call center. We answer." And he turned away, and I was like, "Hold on, wait a second. Where are we going?" Next guy said, "Can I help you?" Like looking at him, looking at me. And I was like, I explained what we did. He turned away. Finally, a young lady sitting at the end gave us the time of day. I said, "Listen, we're not here to sell you anything. We're just here to tell you what we do. Notice your phones are ringing. Nobody's answering them. Like, we can do that for you." And she gave us the contact information to her manager. And I was like, "Well, is he here right now?" And she's like, "Well, no, he goes home." And I'm like, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. Like, I don't want to insult the intelligence of what you're doing here, but 3:00 in the afternoon, like, how's the manager leaving at service when we should be making sure that, all the status checks are done, people are picking up their cars, right? Like, those are the little things that, like, it's the customer experience. Like, to me, a manager should be managing the customer experience over anything else.
Anthony, from your side, why do you think it looks like this?
Well, I think it really has to do with the strategy for 99% of dealerships. They're really focused on acquisition instead of retention, right? All the processes that are put in place are put in place to try to get that customer. There's no real strategy on how to create that relationship and then take ownership after the sale. Processes are hard to follow for most businesses, never mind the dealership in general. And post sales, where really most people drop the ball. I mean, it's hard enough doing, trying to get them in the dealership, but you shouldn't just try to be selling one car to a customer. You should be trying to sell 3, 4, or 5 through a customer. And that's to turn them into a client, right? And the way to do that is to create that relationship. And, unfortunately, not many people focus on the relationship side of the business, in my opinion.
That's right. Yeah. Do you think that most people in charge, with their name on the building, even realize that it's happening like this?
I believe some do. I believe most do, but most don't know how to fix it, right? It's a 1% better everyday approach. If you really want to focus on the customer experience, then it really starts from the digital showroom, right? And it goes all the way after the sale. But accountability is probably one of the biggest things that, you see in life in general, never mind in a dealership world. So I understand the struggle. But I really think the people with their last name on it do know what's going on. They just don't know how to change it.
Yeah. Nothing consistent, nothing meaningful, right? So if we all agree this is happening, I just can't, why hasn't it been fixed? Sean, from a leadership standpoint, what do you think's driving this?
Well, I think that it's a mindset shift, right? Because you get what you focus on in business. So in reality, if you look at a typical dealership, what percentage of their attention is focusing on handling the fresh lead versus handling existing customers and retaining them? So I think you have to ask yourself a lot of questions like, what part of your pay plans aim at generating repeat business? What metrics does your team get coaching on around retention? What's your minimum standard for repeat sales or found business? Or like, what percentage of existing service customers are receiving engagement from a service to sales trained and qualified sales consultant at your store? Because it is a different type of engagement and requires a different sort of training. I think if you ask yourself those questions, you'll find there's a massive gap there.
Yeah. It's more of a leadership problem or more than a process problem?
Yeah, man. I'll tell you a quick war story. When I was in combat, I'll never forget, the war had just started. We were part of a big convoy rolling through Anajaf, the city of Anajaf in southern Iraq. And all of a sudden, we had a one-star general that was in our convoy. And all of a sudden, as we're driving through the streets, our convoy gets blocked and we get ambushed and we're being attacked from all angles. And everyone's ducking in their Humvee because including myself, trying to avoid getting shot. And this general gets out of the front Humvee like it was something from a movie, lights up a cigar, and's like, "Hey," I'll never forget. I was in the turret. He's like, "PSYOP, turret gunner, second story, third window, shoot." He starts walking up and down the convoy, telling everyone where to aim, and that completely turned the tide of the battle. So at the end of the day, it's the leader's job to direct fire and tell the troops where to shoot. So if you have your team focusing solely on handling those fresh leads, hopefully you're not going to be shooting at the, going after the retention sale and the repeat business. So I think, yes, it all stems from leadership.
Anthony, what role do you think the tools that are available to dealers and CRMs, for instance, play in this?
They play a huge role, but it's funny that you say CRMs. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges I see in the industry is getting dealerships to use them effectively, making it a requirement instead of a request, especially as an offsite BDC. I always recommend dealers keep their leads. I'm not really looking to take their leads and work them for them because I believe they should work them harder than anybody else. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, once I send them an invoice, the microscope gets really, really fine tuned on me. So I know the results have to be there and I can't count on the dealership to make sure that they use the CRM, right? So there's things I have to do to make sure that they use the CRM, and I tell them, if this is something that I have to put in place just because I don't know what's going on the other side, imagine what's going on if a company like me is not involved, meaning the leads are coming in, but there's no daily check of what's going on with the daily processes. And thank God I've learned how to put things into play to where I can have checks and balances to where when we're doing follow for my team. So the tools are there, but I told dealers if they made a CRM that looked like Facebook, everybody would use it, right? It's just getting them to use those tools.
So the tools exist, but the ownership and execution don't really. Vic, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. Holding the service advisor or the salesperson accountable, number one, you got to have buy-in from upper management. Not, the dealer may turn around and say, "I love this," but if he doesn't have his management team bought into the process, it's just going to continue being the same old mess. Okay, and you know what? I was a firm believer back in the day when I was in a dealership, if it didn't happen in the CRM, it never happened. And you got to make sure that these guys are using it. And whether you incentivize them in the beginning or they realize that this has to be done this way, or otherwise maybe car sales or car service is not for you. It's the owner's name is up on top of the building and his reputation is at stake, and you got to do the right thing. And you know what? In the long run, it puts money in your pocket. Sell more cars, service more cars, you're writing more ROs. You got to do the right thing.
Yeah, you got it. And just to bring it back to the numbers, only about 25% of customers are actually scheduling service at delivery. So it's not a small issue. It's happening everywhere. So I want to talk about kind of transition into what's actually working. What works? Let's make it practical. If each of you walked into a dealership tomorrow, I'm sure some of you guys were in dealerships today. What's the first thing that you'd fix? Matt, one operational change that immediately improves retention.
Know the amount of phone calls you're getting, know the amount of phone calls you're missing, and figure out how to fix that problem.
Who owns that in the store?
Everybody.
Anthony, what needs to change on the sales floor after the deal?
I tell everybody, we're all entrepreneurs, but most people don't know it. So we got to, try to coach our salespeople to become sales professionals and understand that their network is everything, and turning customers into clients is how they can get themselves to the next level. And just like they have a process of getting them into the store, there should be a process on as soon as they sell. And, for example, once a month, I take one of my clients and I just take a random client and I send them lunch and pizza and soda. And I put a note on it. I say, "Hey, listen, tell them it's from ATS. Lunch is on us. Pick up the phone during lunch and set some appointments." I don't have to do that. And it's a very small investment, but that small investment lets them know I'm just not there for the dollars and I'm thinking about them. And These are the things that sales professionals need to do. And if they did that, you wouldn't have to worry about all the new leads coming into the system because you'd be nurturing the leads that you're already worked with.
Well, that's another nice incentive to work with Anthony there. Nice free.
Free lunch.
So, what do you think the best salespeople are doing do differently in this case that we're talking about, Anthony?
Where I see the difference between top performers and your everyday salesperson is their daily habits. Like, for instance, it's success leaves clues. It's the people that wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's the people that are in the CRM first. Like, one of the things I challenge my clients with, especially because when I'm consulting and I'm in their CRMs, I said, do me a favor. Do not let me beat you into your CRM. If I have to beat you into your CRM, that means I care about your leads more than you do. So I look for the habits for what time they come in. Are they there early? How do they speak? Is there a daily lead audit, right? What kind of conversation are they having? Are they coming with the hospitality mindset? It's really all the small things. And I truly believe hospitality is behind everything. And the CRM is where we take all the information from the customer and we put them in. We're collecting dots, right? And then the sales professionals should use that information to put those dots together to create the experience, right? To create that hospitality feeling, because you can't take a picture of it. So I really believe that the sales professionals that excel just have really, really, really good habits, and they're really, really disciplined.
I like that. Zooming out, Sean, what separates stores that actually retain customers?
Well, I think that first off is proper hiring. You need the right person in the right seat. And there's different sales profiles out there. So, are you hiring a hunter, or are you hiring a farmer, or are you hiring an engineer, or, or what combination thereof? So I think there's a lot of, really great technology and processes now. The old way of, like, you interview someone and you're trying to sell them on working at your dealership and they're trying to sell you on getting hired. So of course you're going to hire them. A sale is always going to happen. But are they, what type of profile are they? Because someone who has that farming mentality is going to be the right person if you want retention. So you need a hunter with a little bit of a farming second, or maybe you're at a store that doesn't have a lot of traffic, so they need to be much better at farming. You really need to hire the right people for your team and your culture. But ultimately, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I'm going to say proper pay plans. And listen, if you're owners, just because it's not in the NADA handbook doesn't mean it doesn't add value. I think dealers get this tunnel vision and groupthink. Everyone's in the 20 groups and those add tons of value, obviously. I'm not hating on 20 groups here. But what I am saying is I think a lot of dealers are like, it's not in the NADA guidebook, so it does not compute, So they miss out on opportunities to build, I'll give you an example. You can build a service to sales BDC role and BDC department at your dealership where the person's only job is to prospect to service, maybe confirm appointments and create sales opportunities. And, they don't usually hire for that role because they won't give them a pay plan that motivates them to stay on the team long-term. So they might put someone in that seat, but they won't pay them. And then they don't get results. And then the person quits. And so I think number one is hiring the right person for the right seat. Number two, pay plans that retain people. Let go of the whole group think and be creative. Some of the most successful dealers I coach literally are on an island. They don't have a lot of peers because they figure it out themselves and they're willing to innovate and think outside the box. Third, I think Matt touched on this earlier, is the alignment between service and sales. Or Vic, I think, mentioned it too. So, there's a lot of obstacles that prevent retention, especially as it relates to mining to service customers. And, is service being punished when you sell a car? Eliminate those obstacles, reward the entire team for group accomplishments. Do your pay plans pit them against each other, right? And then does the GM do a great job of uniting service and sales? I see this across dealerships. The departments are so siloed, and the owner or the GM isn't really doing a great job of getting them working together. So high level engagements. Lastly, I'd just say from a tactical thing is, high level engagements reaching the masses. Again, do you have a good marketing message? Is the team aligned? What percentage of your owners are you touching on a regular basis? How are those combos going? If you can't answer those questions, you're probably not doing it at all. So finding ways to really make those connections consistently and measuring those are the things that work.
From the customer's perspective, What are the dealers missing?
Well, I look at it two ways. I think one of the most glaring things that stand out to me, because I purchased a car just about 8 months ago. Okay. I didn't even see the service department. What about the service walk? You know, I mean, they never introduce. I mean, I know when I sold cars, you know, you always got to have that handle. Okay. Because how else are you going to retain that customer? How else are you going to have that customer coming back into the service department? I was really good friends with one particular service advisor, and every one of my customers was introduced to Joe. Okay. And Joe had the greatest follow-up. Okay. And he always told me when one of my customers popped in, so I could go out there and say hello to them, you know, and say, hey, you know, there's nothing wrong in asking, you have anybody in the family that's looking for a vehicle right now? Maybe your kids look at you know, they're going to be driving soon. You're going to need a car for them, you know, something to get around in. You know, you got to be on the ball all the time. And also, what I liked was our dealer incentivized the salesperson to introduce it and do a service walk. And therefore, that party, the guy that you're using, the service advisor, if he does his job, he gets a piece of it too, you know? And it's like Sean was saying, it's a group reward, okay? It's not just sales or it's not just service. You're doing both, and you keep everything together. And not only that, the numbers are going to go up. You're going to retain more customers. You're going to have more repeat sales, okay? And your ROs are going to go up. Guaranteed. It's guaranteed. And that, it only goes by one way. Got to communicate with the customer during and after the sale constantly.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's about owning that relationship, you know, from the second they walk in the door to even after they leave, right? The car purchase it's a big deal, and it lasts a long time. The average car ownership is just getting longer and longer. What are we doing to stand out throughout that whole process? So, you know, buying and servicing your car at your dealership becomes the only logical choice. So let's get into our next segment, that is tactical takeaways. Let's simplify it into 3 things any store can actually act on immediately. Number 1, schedule the first appointment before the customer leaves. All right, that's what we're talking about. Let's get that 25% up. Right, we know the statistics behind people regularly servicing their cars at the dealership. The odds of them buying their next car from you go up, and that's what it's all about. Number 2, building a real post-sale ownership journey. It's not just sending reminders. All right, that's, you know, it's not just checking that box. Guys, put tools in place to actually own that customer throughout their journey and make loyalty easy. Number 3, align sales and service around that customer. All right. Simple thing. Introduce your customers into service, right? Hey, when they come in for service, introduce them back into sales, right? It's just one cohesive organization. So the sale is not the finish line. It's where the relationship should start. So a couple closing questions. Just going to ask a few, keep these tight and practical. Number 1 for Sean, who actually owns the customer after the sale?
I think team members own the customer relationship, but the dealership leaders own the employee relationship. So I'll kind of recap everything that I shared earlier just by saying that, you know, the customer fell in love with your sales consultant, and that's probably who needs to continue to deepen that relationship. And the leadership of the dealers need to ensure the employees know what's important and that they have the right attitude. Like Anthony mentioned earlier, right? It's the retention versus transaction, relational versus transactional. So that's up to the dealership leaders.
Yeah, Matt, what are your thoughts? Who actually owns the customer after the sale?
So it has to be everybody. I mean, salespeople, we can say, I mean, turnover in automotive is what it is, but it really has to be everybody. I'll leave you with this little story. When I was working in Pennsylvania, the dealership I worked at, if the owner caught the customer trying to find service, he went back to the salesperson, and it was not a pretty conversation. So when I sold cars, I showed them where service was. And I said, hey, when you pull in for your appointments, for your first service appointment especially, come find me, because I'd like to personally make sure we get your car bumped to the front of the line. It was a way to prevent the owner getting a customer walking around aimlessly, right? So every time they came in, if they were walking around aimlessly, they're like, can I help you? And I'm like, I'm looking for Matt. And so it directed them back towards me. And I was like, hey, you're here for service. I'm like, yeah, I am. And I'm like, follow me. Let's get you around the building. Because you have to go all the way around the building. It got confusing. You have to go between the gravestone. It was weird. But at the end of the day, it's all about making sure you're wrapping your arms around them every time you come across them.
Love it. And then, hey, Sean, again, how do you get sales teams to even care about retention?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need a clearly defined system and process that's measurable in that arena. If it's important at the top, it'll be important to the team. You know what you're going to track and measure, but the biggest theme here is consistent coaching reinforcement. It's not just like one conversation, hey, we're going to do this service retention thing, and then you don't even talk about it for 3 months. It's got to be consistent coaching. So, every leader, it's hand-to-hand combat. Every leader needs to sit down with each team member and ask them the hard questions. Like, what do you want to gain from working the service drive? What's stopping you from doing that? And if they can uncover those obstacles and coach each person through it and then challenge them to commit and then hold them accountable to that, you'll get the growth you need.
Love it. Anthony, what do you think? Getting sales teams to care about retention, not just making the sale.
No, well, number one, I think it starts with, you have to care about people, right? So I would think that the leadership really needs to care about that employee, number one, right? If you want your employee to care about your customer, you got to care about your employee, because happy employees make happy customers. So the same attention that you want them to give your clients, let's make sure that we're giving to the employee as well. And what I try to tell people is, when you become a professional and you really care for people after the sale, it's going to help you separate yourself. And if you do it the right way, you're going to brand yourself at the same time. Meaning, if they were to make sure they got their reviews done all the time and they had a follow-up process, like Sean said, for after the sale, to where they were consistently touching their people within so many months or whatever it may be, they would find that number one, their incomes would go up, but they'd be building themselves an online brand, right? Instead of chasing leads, they would become the lead. Right? Because think about how many cars, if they're selling 15 to 20 cars a month, let's say 15, you're probably selling about 180 cars a year. That's 180 people that you've made very, very happy. And why should you have to convince your future customers of how good you are when you can have all your past clients tell everybody else for you? So I think the best way to get them to buy in is, number one, to buy into them as an employee and treat them the way you want them to treat your clients. And number two, give them a process that we can hold them accountable to. But like Sean said, don't have it be every other month. It has to be consistent. It's a contact sport, just like Sean said. So I couldn't.
Yeah, I love that. Why aren't CRMs solving this though?
Because nobody likes to use them, unfortunately. It stands for cash revenue machine in my book, right? I've challenged dealerships. I said, listen, I'll come to your dealership and I won't take a fresh up. And I promise you, I'll sell your team in a week and I'll just sit inside your CRM, because there's two showrooms. There's a brick and mortar and there's a digital showroom. And most people are sitting inside the brick and mortar, avoiding the digital showroom, right? And there's thousands and thousands of leads in there. Just nobody wants to engage them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Just comes down to people not using it, I guess. The meat is in there. What does that make you think of?
I'm still muted. Hey, Sean. So the one thing I learned many, many years ago is that with retention, okay, you sell them up front, they come through the back, and in 3 years if they're leasing, or 4 years if they're leasing, time to buy a new car. So it's a cycle. It's a cycle. And if you do the right thing by doing the right thing at the sale, keeping the relationship there, okay? Not just, birthday cards or whatever, but a little bit extra, okay? Service. You're retaining service. They're getting their, and you branded yourself like, you're the brand, okay, number one, because you're selling yourself when you're speaking to a customer, number one. They already selected the vehicle that they want, or the OEM, the manufacturer. They want a Ford, they want a Chrysler, they want a Chevy, okay? The most important thing after that is branding that customer to that dealership. So now everybody in that dealership who's part of the team, that's who owns the customer. And that's where it's got to be. Okay? It's easy to be a Ford guy. It's easy to be a Chevy guy, but I want to be Schultz Ford guy. Okay? I like Schultz. I like going to Schultz. They take care of me. They know my name. They know my vehicle. Okay? They take care of me when I got to leave the car there for a day or two. Okay? And they'll do the right thing. That's what sells and retains the customer. The individual service by the team. And they're branded to that dealership.
So Vic, you're in stores, every day. I'm wondering, when you get their business, you got 30 days to improve retention in the store. What is it that you're doing first?
First thing is to be honest with you, I try to put together sales and service, and preach it or show them, coach it. Everybody calls me coach. I've been a high school football coach for 40 years. And I take that kind of a relationship and experience to the sales end of it and showing them if sales and service are cohesive and you get the leadership, your general manager or your GSM, who's your head coach, okay, he's got to be the guy that's repetition is your best coach. You got to do it over and over and over again. Okay, and you just, like Sean was saying, you can't go revisit it 3 months from now. That's crazy. You got to be talking about it continuously. Okay, that's the main thing. Making sure you know your process with the sale. You got that down pat. Now what are you going to do that you could keep that customer technically for life? Not just to because, hey, Matt mentioned, guys, there's turnover that's huge. But if you're good at what you do and your customer loves you, so to speak, you go down to another dealership and you send out your memo, your emails, telling customers you're no longer here, you're here. You're going to get a good number of them if they really like the service that they got to wherever you are. And that's key. And then you do the whole system all over again. You gotta marry that together. That's my gut.
Provide exceptional service and introduce your customers into service from the sales side. Introducing them to service, let them know that you're a point of contact for life. Car needs, you come back here. We'll get you the answers. Sean, I got to ask you, if you had 30 days to improve retention in a store, where are you starting?
Well, first and foremost, my recommendation is I'm going to stop defining insanity. And what I mean by that is stop doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. I think it's important to note, you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. And you're like one of your team, one of your players, you're on the field playing to win, but you don't have someone on the sideline watching you play the game. So my first recommendation would be hire someone outside, hire a third party, anyone on this meeting. I mean, talk to JP about VinSight and Vic about VinSight, because there's an AI tool that all your customers get, and they can chat with the dealer with an AI that represents the dealer, and hire Anthony Alagona to help with the BDC piece and the CRM management, and hire Matt and Bowtie Solutions to drive up retention, and hire car motivators to teach your leaders how to coach and develop your team and create accountability. And I think that's the biggest opportunity, man, is partner with someone that has proven results. And case in point, we've got a few, I've had a lot of clients that have mutual, where we are on this conversation, mutual vendors. And I'll never forget this. One of my dealers calls me up. He's like, Sean, one of my dealers that you haven't worked with yet is struggling in retention. Can you help us out? And I was like, sure. So next thing you know, we're working together to build a service BDC, and we're getting them some software. And he's like, I need an expense neutral pay plan. And so we engineer something that's never been done before for that. And we come up with that. And next thing you know, they went from last place in their market to number one in the region for 3 consecutive years for retention growth. And they reached 3rd place in their region for customer retention in service. And then we added a service to sales element just by working with vendors and partners like you guys. So I think, and everyone on this meeting, on this webinar, so I think that would be my recommendation, is stop defining insanity, hire a trusted third party, and be open to trying something new.
Love it, Sean. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah.
30
So the
days.
biggest thing is, and I'll say this all the time, is know your numbers, right? And so for us on our end is know how many calls you're getting, know how many calls you're missing. How do you fix that leak? And then from there, like Sean was talking about with retention, right? Start with the low hanging fruit. Start with your recall campaigns, then start with your private oil offer campaigns. You know, a lot of our most successful dealerships will come to us and say, hey, what do you see that's working out there? I mean, a golden nugget, if you watch this webinar, steal it and work with it. Stop advertising percentages off. Your average customer, unless they're 73 years old and shops at Kohl's, cannot do percentages in their head. So start advertising, you know, is pricing, right? Because that's everything we've ever learned in life. Everything is, right? Real estate agents is, cars is. So why are you going to start doing percentages? And so I tell dealers, do you know, a is now price, and that'll start moving the needle. And then start talking to your customers, finding out what they're looking for, right? I mean, use AI to go and take all your Google reviews and find out all the negative things. They're telling you what you don't want to pay attention to, right? Because anybody that's ever worked in any kind of dealership, if you look at the general manager or the sales manager, anybody like that, it's like, hey, we got this negative review. It's never met with, what do you think we have to do to change it? It's like, well, you don't understand. They were in here. You should have seen what it was like. It's always, I was on the retail side. I get it, right? So look at what they're saying negative and see if there's something common that you can bring and make it positive. You know, and Jonathan Dawson said this on a clubhouse that I was on today. If you ask enough of your customers why they chose to purchase from you, you'll know and see the common things that you do and do really well, and then make that your why buy message, and that'll help you shift the focus of your customers and focus on who you're marketing to.
Very nice. Hey, Anthony, I'm going to let you speak to this as well.
What I would do is I would probably go in there and monitor their habits for a day or so, see how they interact with their people, and then I would put processes in place for customer touches, right? Train them on the art of hospitality, because that's what's going to separate themselves. And you know, when you really care about people, everything else in the equation becomes really, really easy, because at the end of the day, we're not even selling cars. We're helping people buy, right? It's like when I was a waiter at a steakhouse, you know, people were coming in for steak. They weren't coming in for anything else. When people come into a car dealership or they come into your digital showroom, they come in to buy a car. And there's usually only a few reasons why they will or they won't buy a car from you. And it all starts with, you know, their first perception and how you communicate. So training people just on the art of communication, how to care about people, document everything that you do, and use all those notes that you document to create the experience, to cultivate the experience that creates hospitality. And if you do that, you'll win more times than you lose.
Nice. Well, awesome, guys. I appreciate everyone's perspective here. It's been a great conversation. If there's one takeaway, it's that dealerships are really good at selling cars, but there's still a real opportunity, and it's what happens after the customer leaves. So the stores that win aren't going to be the ones just really good at selling cars. They're going to be the ones that actually keep the customer coming back after the sale. I appreciate everyone joining today. Reach out to these guys. These guys are experts. Feel free to reach out to us at Vinsight. We can talk about what you're doing, maybe ways that we can help. We'll see you next time.